The Georgia Senate runoff was nothing less than a populist revolt against the GOP establishment. In this video, we're going to take a look at what was behind the loss of the two Republican senators, how the pro-Trump forces that dominate the GOP have had it with the Republican establishment, and why both yesterday in Georgia and today in D.C. is nothing less than the beginning of the single greatest populist uprising the world has ever seen. You are not going to want to miss this. We're going to dive right into this, but first we need to thank our sponsor, and that's the makers of the Cold Killer Heater. It's an amazing device. It works even in the coldest corners of our homes where it seems impossible to warm up. It's my very own furnace at my fingertips. I can move it virtually anywhere I want. My desktop, countertop, patio, or any other flat surface that needs heat. Order the Cold Killer today and take advantage of up to 50% off for first-time buyers. Visit thecoldkiller.com. That's thecoldkiller.com, and click on the link in the description below and stay warm this winter season today. All right, I'm sad to say that we predicted this. In a video a few weeks back, we predicted that if Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue did not stand up and fight for Trump, they were going to lose the Senate runoff to two Democrats for the first time in over 2 decades in Georgia, and it appears that that's precisely what's happened. The ultra-Marxist Raphael Warnock defeated Loeffler, while Perdue's race is still too close to call, but we're going to assume that he is toast. He's going to lose as well. The most notable aspect of this election, in my view, is the dramatic drop in the number of Republicans that came out to vote. Obviously, there was a lack of enthusiasm for the two Republican candidates who never really seemed to decide whether they were going to stand up for Trump or whether they were going to hide behind Mitch McConnell. And then, of course, you had the same old shenanigans that we saw on November 3rd. At least one county said that they were done counting ballots for the night. They were all going home with thousands of ballots yet to be counted, and they would resume counting the next morning. Boy, yeah, I wonder who's going to win that county, right? So understandably, there was a noticeably depressed turnout among Republicans in Georgia, and among the ones that did show up to vote, a CNN poll found that a full 75% of them thought that the 2020 election was rigged. And we got to think about that. Had Republicans come out in mass, that number most likely would have been higher, 80-90%. They simply didn't come in at the numbers that the GOP candidates needed them in order to beat the new election rules set by Georgia's never-Trumper Secretary of State. Again, I will never tire of reminding everyone, the new election rules established for Georgia elections were established by a rhino Republican never-Trumper Secretary of State, which removed the chain of custody verification procedures and all but guaranteed Democrat victories in the presidential race and the Senate runoffs. And so in many respects, this was nothing short of a self-inflicted wound by the Republican establishment. The establishment Republicans enforced conditions that all but guaranteed Trump's defeat, which, as it turns out, involved the collateral damage, however inadvertently, of the defeat of the two Republican Senate candidates. And this self-inflicted wound was made all the worse by Mitch McConnell's politically suicidal move in endorsing Biden as president-elect when 6 states were still being contested by Trump and his legal team. It was a clear snub, a clear abandonment of fighting on behalf of Trump, and a clear and enthusiastic embracing of Biden and Harris. So what we're seeing here, what we have to understand, is we're seeing here a massive disruption in the equilibrium between the leadership of the Republican Party and the rank and file, the grassroots of the party. And by the way, we would have seen something very similar if Bernie Sanders had managed to get the Democrat nomination. We'd be seeing a comparable volatility within the Democrat Party if that happened. That's obviously one of the things the Democrat leadership wanted to avoid with Sanders, and that's one of the reasons why they went with Sleepy Joe. We have to understand that there is today a massive disruption in the equilibrium between the Republican leadership, which is thoroughly globalist, thoroughly elitist, a major part of the political class on the one hand, and the Republican voter, the rank and file Republican, the grassroots Republican, who's thoroughly nationalist, populist, and traditionalist. Now, you may have heard about the recent humiliation of Mittens Romney. He was traveling back to Washington, D.C. the other day, and all of a sudden, bless his heart, he finds himself on an airplane that was filled with Trump supporters traveling to D.C. for the MAGA rallies going on today. And they started accosting Romney, chanting out, "Traitor, traitor, traitor" on the plane. He was confronted. One person rebuked him for betraying the very conservative values that he was voted in office to represent. Instead, he's become the poster boy for the far leftists at CNN and MSNBC, and he's a hero to them. So you could see on this flight a microcosm of this radical disruption between the Republican leadership and the Republican rank and file. And what we've got to understand is that this disruption or this animosity that's been developing has been developing for some time. Again, it's going on in the Democratic Party as well, with the friction that's emerging between, say, the old bougie white neoliberals like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden on the one hand, and the new BLM Antifa Democrats on the other. So don't worry, the Democratic Party is poised to go through its own disruptions as well, its own upheavals. It's already been going on, but I think it's important that we recognize that this upheaval has been going on for some time now. Now, before we get into that, I do want to personally invite you to our exclusive New Year's virtual conference this Saturday on January 9th, where we're going to talk precisely more about this populist uprising. We've got Pennsylvania State Senator Doug Mastriano. He's going to be with us, as well as Ian Smith, the New Jersey gym owner, defying their governor's tyrannical lockdown orders. Now, though it's a virtual conference, you can enjoy it from the comfort of your own home. Seating is limited. The spots are going fast. And to make it even better, we are extending our New Year's 30% discount for just the next day or so. So do not wait. Make sure to click on that link below and register today. And I look forward to seeing you this Saturday. All right. So what we have to understand in all of this is that scholars have known that one of the key characteristics of globalism is the rise of what they call an expert class. Okay, so this is because globalist societies are technological societies. And as such, they foster a class of technological experts to oversee and govern a globalist society. And when this so-called expert class manifests itself in politics, it's given rise to something that scholars actually call re-feudalization. How's that for a term? Re-feudalization. And the gist of it is that just as a medieval society, feudal societies, govern according to the norms and wishes of a privileged class, lords, nobles, dukes, and the like, so globalist societies are increasingly governed according to the interests and concerns and values of a political class. And here's the key. Those values, interests, and concerns are becoming increasingly alienated from the values, interests, and concerns of the people, the populace. And this is what's giving rise to the massive populist surge, not just here in the United States, but throughout the world. And this massive populist revolt is manifesting itself in the equally massive upheaval that's going on in both parties, but right now, most particularly in the Republican Party. I think where I miscalculated things, I believe this upheaval, this disruption was finished in 2016, particularly with the defeat of the Never Trumper movement. You have to remember that you had 30 plus Republican senators and congressmen and governors who came out against Trump after the Billy Bush tape was released by the Washington Post in October 2016. And they were all like, we got to abandon Trump and let's just work with Hillary and let's get back in the game in 2020. There was a clear divide between that feckless leadership of the Republican Party, who was so quick to abandon Trump any chance they got, and the grassroots, faithful rank-and-file Republican voter, 95% of which voted for, well, 89% in 2016, 95% in 2020. So I thought that this clash, this staggering, this upheaval in the politics as usual establishment party was resolved as of 2016. But then you had the leadership of the GOP exemplify the very abandonment of Trump that they saw back in October of 2016 right now in 2020. But now we don't have any recourse. We don't have a November 8th to rectify the wrongs of the GOP establishment, right? And we don't have the ability to express the power of the new Republican Party centered around the deplorables, the nationalist, populist, traditionalists all across the nation. This deplorable crowd that gave the GOP victory in states like Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, Pennsylvania for the first time in decades. That's the Trump coalition that promised to dominate for the foreseeable future. But what we're learning here as a result of the Georgia governor's refusal to address the voter fraud on November 3rd, Brian Kemp, who should be recalled immediately, or the Republican legislature's refusal to do anything about it in Georgia, together with Mitch McConnell's betrayal of Trump in declaring Biden president-elect even as 6 states were still being contested, and the rise of Mittens Romney and Ben Sassy Pants and Pat Toomey, who are more aligned with Nancy Pelosi than they are with Donald Trump, what we're learning in all this is that that divide, that upheaval between the people and the political class is greater than ever before. The rift was not healed in 2016 or 2018. The deep state political class has doubled and tripled down. And the Republican leadership is clearly signaling that they would rather work with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris than have Trump as their leader for the next 4 years. It's really that simple. In the end, your typical Republican leader in Georgia and Washington, D.C. has more in common with Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden than they do with Donald Trump and with us, the deplorables. They frankly want nothing to do with us. And so, as a result, Georgia Republican voters, the rank and file, said loud and clear yesterday they want nothing to do with them. The Georgia Republicans said loud and clear they want nothing to do with this feckless Republican leadership. The Republican leadership has abandoned them, and so Mitch McConnell, bye-bye, you're now the new minority leader. We're abandoning you. That's, in effect, what happened yesterday. The deplorables largely abandoned the Republican Party and gave them and Mitch McConnell one of the biggest middle fingers ever given to a political party. So obviously now it's retribution time. In many respects, the deplorables, the MAGA crowd, is saying across the nation, let the Democrat clowns do whatever they want over the next 2 years. We're going to crush them in the midterms. It's going to be a red wave like we have never seen. But in the meantime, we are going to cleanse the Republican leadership of every single rhino in the nation. We're going to primary each and every one of them, and we're going to beat them easily. We're going to spend the next 2 years cleansing the Republican Party of any hint of McConnell's and Romney's and Brian Kemp's and that feckless Georgia Secretary of State Raffensperger. It's on and it's over. I believe both yesterday in Georgia and today in Washington, D.C. is the beginning of a populist uprising unlike anything we have ever seen. Now, before you go, make sure to like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. And you definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded. It was our latest live stream on the Pennsylvania Senate sending a letter to Congress demanding the delay of the certification of electors. They want this brought back to the state legislatures where they can kick it back into the House. You are not going to want to miss this. So make sure to click on the link, and I will see you over there. God bless.